Hey everyone, my name is Jessica Wiley. I'm currently studying police foundations at Algonquin College, and I'm here to go over protocol to follow for the first officer responding to a crime scene. The first police officer acts as the initial caretaker and decision maker for potentially crucial evidence. It is the decisions of the first officer on the scene that bear strong influence on the eventual outcome of the crime scene and follow-up investigations. Without the correct actions of the first police officer to respond, many cases would go unsolved regardless of the abilities of the criminal investigator. This just goes to show you how important the first responder is to a crime scene. Okay, so first off, let's define what a crime scene is. A crime scene means any location where one or more of a series of events involved into the commission of the crime occurred. This includes any location where a crime was actually committed, any location where evidence of the crime is located, any location where evidence of the crime is known to have been previously located. So patrol officers play an important role in the crime scene response because they're often the first law enforcement personnel to arrive. The primary goal of the first police responder includes preserving life, ensuring public safety, preserving the scene, preventing contamination of potential physical evidence, dealing with witnesses and suspects, answering to the media, and documenting the situation. It is important to remember to never drive your police vehicle to a location directly onto the crime scene perimeter. A wise first police responder will, whenever possible, park a short distance from the alleged scene to ensure safety from the possible hazards, prevent possible contamination or destruction of evidence. And this also allows the officers to take notes upon arrival before exiting the vehicle.
Step by step.
Okay, so for this step one would be to respond to the scene with caution and to preserve life. Before stepping out of your patrol car, when arriving to the scene, the first step to follow would be to record any and all information provided to you at the time of the initial notification to respond regardless of who the information came from. It would be then important to request dispatch to obtain assistance through a supervisor and medical assistance. Remember, the moment you are given an assignment, it becomes your responsibility to take charge of that assignment. In the critical first moments, caution is essential. Even if the scene looks quiet, assume the crime is still in progress. Do not take unnecessary risks. Officers should also be aware that curiosity seekers who might compromise important evidence. It's also important to realize that bystanders may be paying close attention and could be potential witnesses. The responding officers should note or log dispatch information. Be aware of any persons or vehicles in or leaving the crime scene. Approach the scene cautiously. Scan the entire area. Note any possible secondary crime scenes. Make initial observations. Look, listen, smell to assess the scene and ensure officer safety before proceeding. Remain alert and attentive. Treat the location as a crime scene until it has been assessed and determined to be otherwise. The officer must attend to any injured parties and obtain proper care for them. Officers should ensure that medical attention is provided in injured people and minimize contamination of the scene. It is important for police officers to assess the victim for signs of life and medical needs, guide medical personnel to the victim to minimize contamination or alteration of the crime scene, instruct medical personnel not to clean up the scene and to avoid moving or altering items originating from the scene, and document any statements, comments made by victims, suspects, or witnesses at the scene. Okay, so now moving on to step 2, securing the scene and securing evidence is essential to any case. So the officer will secure the crime scene, making sure that any evidence is preserved and no one tampers with anything at the scene. It usually depends on the type of crime, but in most cases, sometimes the biggest enemy most officers have in crime scene security is the environment itself, and this we can't control. The universal rule for the establishment of a good crime scene perimeter is, when in doubt of the actual crime scene boundaries, go bigger than actually needed. The philosophy behind this rule is found in the saying, it is easier to make a crime scene smaller than it is to make it bigger. As soon as the other officers come onto the scene, it is important to assign them to different tasks as to monitoring the conditions of the victims, guarding and securing the scene, standing guard and preventing contamination of evidence, and any other help that may be needed in order to preserve the scene. It is then important to identify, establish, protect, and secure boundaries. Officers can protect and secure a crime scene by defining and controlling its boundaries. Boundaries should be expanded beyond the initial scope of the crime scene with the understanding that the boundaries can be reduced in size. So the responding officers should set up physical barriers. So you can do this using ropes, cones, crime scene barrier tape, available vehicles, personnel, other equipment, or even using existing boundaries such as doors, walls, and gates. Document the entry and exit of all people entering and leaving the scene once boundaries have been established. Control the flow of personnel and animals entering and leaving the scene, and work to preserve and protect evidence that may be lost or compromised. Document the original location of the victim or objects that you observed being moved. So step 3, dealing with witnesses and suspects. It is important to obtain information from witnesses regarding the person responsible for the offense. Sometimes the suspect has already fled the scene before arrival, so keep this in mind. Request information of the person making notification to you. If the call involves a crime of violence, you would want to know the answers to questions pertaining to officer's safety. Is the suspect still on the scene? Is he armed? The suspect name and/or physical description? What about the victim? And so on. It is important to identify all individuals at the scene, such as suspects, witnesses, bystanders, victims, family, friends, medical and other assisting personnel, in order to secure and separate them from each other. Obtain names, addresses, and telephone numbers of potential witnesses that could help in solving the case. Moving on to step 4, legal issues. When questioning suspects and/or witnesses, it is important to remember to inform them with a caution. The standard police caution is read or recited to the individual by the person in authority prior to questioning. The caution informs the suspect or accused that any statement provided may be repeated as evidence in court. It's also important to remember, under the Police Service Act of Ontario, police officers have a common law authority to investigate crime and enforce the law. There are no legal search requirements to search a crime scene unless the offender is known to have some sort of control over the property interested in. Common law authorizes first responding officers at violent crime scenes to enter without warrant to perform a search for victims, offenders, and weapons to ensure officer safety. Step 5, dealing with the media. The media can be considered to be a very powerful tool to a police investigation. The 3 fundamental principles of effective police-media relations are: 1. Never lie to the media by knowingly providing them with information you know to be false. 2. Never ignore the media's request for information. And 3. Never demonstrate favoritism to any particular media outlet. You'll see that some benefits for the police when cooperating with the media include public awareness, public education, which encourages citizens to take proactive measure, and public confidence in local police services.
Relax and take notes.
So for our last and final step, step 6, is the use of the notebook by officer, which is considered one of the most essential tools. So finally, the officer compiles a report of his or her work. Officers should create a permanent record of all activities conducted and observations made as soon as possible after the event. All this information is used in the formal post-crime scene investigation. It's sometimes suggested to recreate a rough sketch of the crime scene in your notebook to depict the location of any evidence that you might have seen that day. Here again, the patrol officer can play a vital role by starting a crime scene log. It is important to document all observations made of the crime scene, including location of persons and items within the crime scene and the conditions upon arrival. So for example, temperature, lighting, were the lights on or off, shades up or down, open or closed, doors and windows, smell, ice, liquids, movable furniture, and so on. The log should also contain arrival and departure times for medical and law enforcement personnel. The log should also include information from eyewitnesses, victims, or suspects, and any comments they made. All officers at the scene should record their actions and observations in detail for the police reports.